All right, good evening. My name is Dele Ayemibo, and you are welcome to another edition of the Import-Export platform brought to you by 3Thinkpest Trade Academy. This is a program that helps international trade to be able to make a sense of how to be able to go about such business or businesses in Nigeria. This evening, we'll continue our discussion on A to Z of export business financing. And we'll be looking at part 15 this evening. So we've done 14 parts already. We're looking at part 15 this evening. For those that have been listening to us or joining us, I believe you've been learning one or two things to be able to help you take informed decision. And sometimes some of the things we discuss are not just for export business. They also can be applied if you are really looking for finance in other areas. Pretty much every other area of business, not just in export, but we are relating it to export in this discourse. So this evening we'll be looking at part 15 of A to Z of export business financing, and what we'll be looking at in specific terms is the type of export financing. Types of export financing. When you're approaching a bank requesting for financing, you need to be clear which type of export financing you really want. And what this does for you is this. Because in Nigeria, our banks are very sound in import financing, but not so good in export financing. So the fact that you know what you want gives you an edge, an opportunity. Olawale Abiola Vera, thank you very much for joining. Good evening. So the fact that you are able to know exactly what you want in terms of the export financing gives you an edge. That means if you don't know what you want, that's also a challenge. Because then you might be meeting an account officer that is gambling with your request, not knowing exactly how to go about it. Why? Our banks are very sound in export finance, import financing, but not so good in export financing. Understandably so, because we have been largely import dependent as a nation, and that's what they've handled for several years. Ekundayo Yemi, thank you very much for joining. Good evening. So we're looking at export financing, which is the part 15 of A to Z of export financing. But we'll be looking at the two types. There are two broad divisions of export financing. If the export financing is being requested for to fund pre-export activity, is called to fund activity before shipment is called pre-export financing. If it involves funding activity after the good has been shipped, funding for subsequent shipment, that is called post-export financing. So broadly speaking, we have pre-export financing and post-export financing. Under this broad division, there are different options. There are numerous types of export financing options available to bankers to choose from depending on the type of export financing. The risk appetite of the bank and the accessible trade finance instrument will determine to a large extent if they are going to be able to go ahead. But you can subdivide export financing into two: pre and post export financing, and then under that you now have different export financing options. Chiamaka Lucy, thank you very much for joining. It's like the ladies are ready for me this evening. Almost everybody that have joined are female, thinking of probably doing export business. I think that's interesting. And come to think of it, majority of people doing commodities in Nigeria are male. Majority of people doing finished products are females. Because most of our finished products are value-added agro-processed products. And since they are food-related, agro-based, for one reason or the other, you tend to find more female in that space in Nigeria. So, welcome and good evening. So let's look at the pre-export financing. Pre-export financing involves the provision of funds to exporter prior to shipment, to fund the procurement and production of the goods and logistic requirement for shipment. It funds the procurement and production of the goods and the logistics requirement for shipment. It funds the procurement and production of the goods and the logistic requirement for shipment. These are all activities required at the beginning or commencement of a transaction. Exactly, sir. Value addition is what most people are after. Okay. Vera, Olawale Abiola, thank you very much. That's my observation, and I'm sure you also observe that. A lot of females, they are really looking at value-added agro products, and that's what we are recommending also, because we have done commodity for so long, it has not helped us as a nation. It's high time we begin to look at value-added export. Value-added export. Value-added export. Now, pre-export financing is more risky for the bank. It's a risky option because of the fact that funding from the bank is going to be used for production of the product, for production or procurement of the item from a third party, most likely. For production or procurement of the item from a third party, most likely. Ade Sheun Adewale, thank you very much for joining the first mail. Good evening. So the bank needs to mitigate the risk of procuring bad quality. They need to mitigate the risk of haulage in transit. They need to mitigate the risk of warehousing, taking custody of the goods. So the risk of a bank is higher when the bank is funding pre-export financing. That means the requirement from the exporter also will be more. Because pre-export financing poses more risk to the exporter, to the banks, or to the financier, or to the investor, or to whoever it is you are getting the fund from, most likely the bank also will be demanding for more things from you in order to be able to protect him on that transaction, which is why we are strongly recommending that you need to have a good understanding of what you want to do and be able to effectively communicate to the bank, also showing the bank how you've designed to mitigate the risk you are likely going to be facing in this export transaction. You also need to be clear the kind of financing you are looking at. On the broad level, is it pre-export financing? Is it post-export financing? On the broad level. Then under the options available, which of the options are you looking at? For example, under pre-export financing, we have the warehouse financing or warrant financing. We have the asset-based line of credit. We have the structured trade finance. We have the assignment of proceed in letter of credit transaction. Let me take the first one. Which is the asset-based line of credit, actually. In asset-based line of credit, I basically have an asset by way of inventory, by way of cash, by way of legal mortgage, a particular kind of asset. On the strength of that, the bank is lending for me to do my production or procurement and effect that shipment. On the strength of that, the bank is lending for me to do my production or procurement for that shipment. On the strength of my collateral, on the strength of my asset, they are lending. So that means if my collateral is worth, let's say 10 million, they can give me maybe up to 7 million. They give me a line and I can draw on that credit line as the need requires. I can draw on it and be able to use it to fund my procurement or to fund my production or to fund my logistics and the shipment of the goods. You can see why the risk of the bank is high, because I will need the fund to go and do one activity or the other. One activity or the other. Now, sometimes the bank might not want, you might tell the bank you don't have a collateral, and there is still a way to arrange it. Sometimes the bank can do what is called warehouse financing or warrant financing. In this arrangement, You not necessarily have to give the bank a collateral, but of course you will be providing equity contribution. Just like we said earlier, equity contribution is something you really cannot do without. Equity contribution is something you really cannot do without. So you might have to give equity contribution to the bank. You might have to give, and I've discussed equity contribution. If you want to know more about equity contribution, check our previous lectures. Check the previous lecture. You'll be able to see the detail of equity contribution. We've discussed this in the past on this A to Z of export business financing. Which I think is lecture maybe 4 or 5. Equity contribution. And equity contribution basically says you are contributing something. The bank is providing, you need 7 million, you are providing about 2 or 3 million, the bank is providing the rest. Now, when you are doing this warehouse financing, remember we are talking about the pre-export financing. When you are doing this warehouse financing, what happens is this. The bank will use the fund you have provided to bring in the initial part of the product into the warehouse. The quality of the item is confirmed. As soon as that is confirmed, then the payment is made to the local supplier who deliver the goods, usually close to the farm if it's commodity, or your warehouse if it's finished product. Then fund is released again for subsequent procurement. This warehouse is manned by an agent of the bank, also called the Collateral Manager. The Collateral Manager ensures the bank holds the custody of the goods. Remember, the bank is not using other collateral. The bank is using the goods as collateral. And part of the fund you provided as collateral. That means the bank must be in charge of the goods. The bank must be in charge of the product. Why? The bank money is at stake here. The bank money is at stake here. So the bank must be in custody, in charge of the goods. Usually through an agent called the Collateral Manager. So when the goods arrive in the warehouse, the quality of the good is confirmed. As soon as the quality of the good is confirmed, payment is made to the agent or local supplier that delivered that goods, and then they can go and bring another set. Kemi Oladipo Adebayo, thank you very much for joining. Good evening and long time. You've not joined us for some days, but you're welcome all the same, and good evening. So you understand the fact that this process I've just described, we have to continue different cycle like that. So let's say, for example, we need maybe 1,000 cartons. Maybe the first set of cartons that was delivered was 250 cartons. Then the bank released money for another 250 cartons. Then the bank released money for another 250 cartons. Then the bank money for another 250 cartons. By the time the goods are completed, fully completed in the warehouse, we can then begin to ship in tranches. Then the first tranche is shipped. Payment is expected to be made. Then the second tranche is shipped. All these are done under the control and supervision of the bank through this agent of the bank called the Collateral Manager. Remember, the money of the bank is at stake. The bank is not necessarily asking for collateral, physical collateral. The bank is relying on the goods and your own advance payment in terms of equity contribution as collateral. So the bank take charge and take custody of the goods. Warehouse financing. Then we have what is called structured trade finance. It's an advanced form of warehouse financing. Let's assume that the local supplier who brought the good to the warehouse require a protection or require an advance payment, such that at the end of the day we will need to use a form of guarantee, a form of standby letter of credit to protect the fund we are giving the local supplier, or to confirm to the local supplier that they will be paid when they deliver the goods. And then we're also providing another form of guarantee, maybe for the delivery of the good itself to the warehouse or for the shipment. When we begin to mix one form of trade finance instrument with this option of warehousing and other options under the pre-export financing, you begin to talk about structured trade finance or structured export finance. And in both cases, both the warehouse financing and structured trade finance, you really are not going to be requiring a physical collateral for the bank. You basically are going to be providing part of the funding for the bank, and the bank provide the rest, but the bank is in charge of the operation of this transaction from the beginning to the end. Why? So that the bank can protect the asset. But whatever cost the bank is incurring in the cost of protecting the asset, collateral manager looking over the asset, you are going to bear the cost. You are going to bear the cost. You are going to bear the cost. So the bank will factor the cost of the collateral manager, factor the cost of every other agent they are engaging, because if the good is moving from the warehouse, for the good to be accepted in the warehouse, a third-party inspection agent will be inspect the goods. The bank will pay for that. And based on the quality of that inspection agent, the warehouse collateral manager will issue a warrant that serves the bank that, look, quality of good in our custody is confirmed. When the good is to be moved out, the bank will also engage an agent again, who is a clearing and forwarding agent, and engage a logistic company who will move the good to the airport, to the seaport or airport, and from the airport or seaport, the good is shipped using a carrier. The bank is going to also pay all this carrier. Because the bank is in charge of the transaction, of course, working with you, because you have to recommend some of the people they are using, who you are comfortable with, but the bank will pay them directly, so they report to the bank directly. But you are going to bear the cost. In the sense that bank will factor every cost into this transaction. So we looked at warehouse financing, structured trade financing, and asset-based line of credit. But there's another one I would like to talk about. It's not really bank releasing money, but bank is facilitating a pre-export financing. Imagine a situation where I have a local supplier who is ready to deliver these goods for shipment, only need to be sure I will be paid, only need to be sure I have a guaranteed form of payment. He is willing to wait for 60 days, for 90 days for him to be paid when he delivers the goods. But he needs my bank to give him assurance that he will get payment if the quality of the good he delivers is good. So if I receive a letter of credit from abroad, letter of credit is a guarantee from buyer's bank that they will pay me when I shipped. On the strength of this guarantee that I receive from the buyer's bank abroad, my bank can then write this local supplier what is called a letter of comfort, giving assurance that he will be paid as long as the good he delivers is of good quality and that the good is shipped. Why? The bank is assuring him, the bank is not guaranteeing him, but the bank is assuring him that as long as this good is delivered and shipped and payment come to us, we will pay you. So what that means is that the exporter will have given an irrevocable undertaking to the bank that the bank should assign a particular percentage of the amount to be paid to this particular exporter. So that means at the commencement of the transaction, the exporter have given an instruction, an irrevocable instruction to the bank. That means he can't wake up tomorrow and say it's not going to deal. If he must revoke it, the local supplier must agree to that revocation. Because it's going to bring the agreement within the local supplier to the bank and go and tell the bank that, look, kindly rewrite this my supplier that he will be paid if you deliver good quality product, number one. If the good is we're able to ship the good, number two. And of course, when the payment comes to you, number three. On the strength of this, the local supplier is willing to deliver the goods. And then, as an exporter, I do the shipment. And of course, the document is given to the bank. The bank sends the document to the buyer's bank. Because it's a letter of credit transaction, the buyer's bank already guaranteed payment on this transaction. The buyer's bank already guaranteed payment on this transaction. On the strength of that guarantee, the buyer's bank effect payment to the bank. When the bank receives the money, without consulting me as an exporter, the bank will debit the amount due to the local supplier and transfer to that local supplier. Why? I have given an assignment of proceed, an irrevocable undertaking to assign my proceed to the local supplier when it arrives. And because the bank has given assurance that he will do this when it arrives, the bank will do that without consulting me. Why? That was the agreement we had. Let's look at the post-export financing before we round up. We've discussed pre-export financing, the asset-based line of credit, the warehouse financing, the structured trade finance, and the assignment of proceeds in an LC transaction. Then we have the post-export financing, and this involves the provision of funds to the exporter after the shipment of their goods to cover funding gap. Provision of funds to the exporter after the shipment of their goods to cover funding gap. I have shipped goods. I'm expecting money 60 days, 30 days, but I need to do another shipment and I don't have enough funds for it. Because I've done a shipment, quality and quantity confirmed, bank abroad giving guarantee that they will pay, my bank can give me a funding to be able to do another shipment. That is called the post-export financing. Post-export financing. Post-export financing. In this post-export financing arrangement, the bank is already, the exporter has already shipped the goods, but comes to the bank requesting the bank to provide funding ahead of that payment that is coming. So that means before my payment comes, 60 days after my shipment, I already got a significant amount of the funds. I already got a significant amount of the funds. I already got a significant amount of the fund. Not all, not all. Remember, the fund I'm expecting include my profit, maybe 20%. So the bank will not give me my profit. The bank will give me the amount I need for the next shipment while I await the payment of the full amount, from which the bank will now deduct its own post-export financing and then give me the balance. So for example, let's say I'm shipping good worth 10 million. I've done the shipment, I'm expecting 10 million. Out of that 10 million, let's say I'm going to make profit of 20%. And then I approach the bank for a post-export financing ahead of when payment is due, maybe end of March. The bank then advanced me about 7 million or 8 million, about 70-80% of the amount, which should basically or barely cover the project cost. I then use that money to go and do another production or do another procurement and then ship out the goods. But before I do all that, along the line, it's possible my payment comes in. Maybe I'm going to do another shipment early April. But I need funds to start production before the end of March. But by the end of March, my payment coming, the bank debits the account for the 8 million he has given to me, and the remaining 2 million is left in the account for me to have access to. Why? Because I'm doing post-export financing. This is less risky for the bank. This involves the provision of funds to exporter after the shipment of their goods to cover the funding gap between the shipment of the goods and the receipt of export proceeds from the buyers abroad. This is a less risky option for the bank because it involves funding the working capital ahead of receipt of payment from abroad. This kind of transaction also is very short. Why? Because it's going to be basically between the time I ship and when I get next payment. Typically it's short, not so long. For example, if my transaction cycle from when I start procurement till when I ship and get payment is 60 days. That means if I'm getting pre-export financing, it will take 60 days for the bank to get paid. But if I'm doing the same transaction for post-export financing, I would have taken care of the first 1 month, which involved my production and procurement and ship. Bank is now waiting for only the remaining 30 days. So typically, for a particular shipment, the post-export financing will constitute a shorter cash conversion cycle for the bank than the pre-export financing. Hence, the risk of the bank is lesser. The pricing of the loan is cheaper. The requirement for the bank is lower. The risk on the bank is lesser. The pricing on the loan is cheaper. The requirement of the bank from you as an exporter is also lesser. Why? The risk on the bank is low. Example of this include invoice discounting. That's an option under this. Invoice discounting. Just exactly the way I've explained it. I go to the bank with my document, show them my invoice. On the strength of the invoice, another document that verified there was a shipment, confirming the quality and quantity, and even the contract for that shipment, the bank is willing to advance fund for me to start another shipment. But please note, in invoice discounting, I am the one that will still follow up on payment. I'm the one that will manage my sales ledger. I'm the one that will follow up on payment. If that payment does not come, the bank will come after me to be able to recover that funds. Why? Because the bank is not buying up my debt. The bank is basically financing that debt. However, there is another flip side to post-export financing called the factoring. Factoring is not common in Nigeria. Currently, there is a bill before the National Assembly. It's called the Law of Factoring. So factoring is going to start in Nigeria very soon. Maybe when we have the 9th Assembly resume, they will consider speedy passage of that bill. That bill allow a bank or a financial institution to buy your debt. The debt you are owing, the bank is willing to buy it off because there is a buyer abroad that have guaranteed they will pay. In that case, the bank will be the one to follow up on payment. The bank pay you off, maybe 95%, 96%, pay you off. When payment comes, you don't get anything again. In invoice country, you get your balance. But in factoring, you don't get your balance because the bank will pay you off completely. The bank literally take over the debt away from you and follow up on the buyer. But the disadvantage is this. If the buyer fails to pay or delay payment, the bank can become very, very ruthless. And that can affect your relationship with that particular buyer. So we have looked at just basically two examples of post-export financing, which is the factoring and invoice discounting. Factoring and invoice discounting. I believe you've learned one or two things again this evening. As we have discussed extensively, type of export financing, and that's under the A to Z of export business financing, part 15. This is Import Export Platform Facebook Live from 3D Best Trade Academy. My name remains Dele Ayemibo. Have a good evening and see you tomorrow morning by 8 a.m. as we discuss A to Z of export business financing, part 16. Bye for now.